Everybody, we'll go ahead and get started for the night. Thank you for joining us. My name is Matt Zadeker. I'm the superintendent of Yorkville District 115. And really appreciate your time and engagement tonight. Tonight, we will have a format where I will provide some just baseline data for everybody to be able to see and provides a starting point for our conversation tonight. And after we provide some context and data, we'll get into some questions. And some of these questions that we ask are more than just about physical structures. We're going to want to know about the district from your perspective, both positives and negatives or challenges that we might have. And then we will facilitate, the conversation that eventually will evolve from the experience, student experience, parent experience, and then to some of the needs that we have as a district when we talk about our physical structures across the district. Normally I would introduce a couple of my colleagues, but they are both gone this evening for some family issues. But we provide our contact information because inevitably, anytime you leave a meeting, you remember that you want to say something or you had a question that you didn't ask. And we want to make sure that you have the opportunity to email us. Craig Wesley is our Assistant Superintendent of Business Services, and Heather DeVerde is our Executive Director of Facilities. And between the three of us, we're kind of the small crew from the district that are shepherding all the information and the themes with our architects. And so if there are anything that you need, things that you have forgotten tonight, please make sure that you reach out and email us. Additionally, we have partners from Studio GC here. They are our architects. They have done a lot of behind the scenes work with our facilities in terms of the assessments, looking at our structures from doors to windows to floors, how all of our buildings are. And so Pat and Brian from Studio GC are here. Brian also is capturing tonight the notes because every time we have a listening session, we want to take those notes and add to what we've heard and to create themes so that as we're thinking and about the next steps in our facility master plan, we're able to capture everybody's thoughts and comments from the various spots. Over the next couple of slides, we've really broken it down to discussing a little bit about our community demographics and the change there, what our students look like, both from demographical, but also the growth piece. And then since we're at YIS, we're going to talk some school-specific data from YIS. As we get into the portion of conversation and the back and forth that we'll have together tonight, I want you to think about not only YIS, but district. Both those lenses are appropriate for tonight. And so there may be some things that you're experiencing as a parent, as a community member here at this particular building, but you may also have some comments or thoughts district-wide, and we certainly encourage that as part of our conversation tonight. So taking a look at this slide, it really just kind of wants to break down what our population looks like in Yorkville. And you can see median age is about 35. But there are some real key points from this slide. Number one is that individuals that live in Yorkville that are from 0 to 19, so our youngest all the way through our school-age children, make up about 32% of Yorkville. So it's a very, very large chunk of our population. And as you matriculate through the age, the 2020 census actually zeroed in on ages 65 and older, which they identify as kind of retirement age. And that is below 7%. If you go back 25 years, that percentage was closer to 14. So you can see the evolution of Yorkville in terms of the population and the age group. We are definitely getting younger and having younger families in the community. And we're seeing that currently, and we'll talk about that in an additional slide, but that also gives us some data for the future in terms of our families and our students. And so as we think about our student growth, we started the data on this slide all the way back to 2002. And at that time, we had just over 2,400 students in our district. Now, you fast forward, and if I would have included all those years, it would have been really hard to read. So we fast forwarded a little bit. And on our 6-day enrollment count this year, after the 6th day, we were over 7,100 kids. So you can see the extreme growth that this community has seen and our district has seen, and which creates some challenges for us. So not only have we seen the number of students increase across our district, this is the demographic makeup of our students. And the Hispanic population, our students who identify as Hispanic, that is our fastest growing population. It sits right around 24%, but just 7 years ago it was at 17%. And so our students who identify as Hispanic certainly is the population that's evolving and changing the fastest. The rest of our demographic breakdown between white students, black, 2 or more Asian, has stayed fairly stagnant over that same time. And so our demographic is starting to evolve within our student population as well. So if we're taking a look, we are at YIS, so we'll take a look at some just YIS unique data. And these numbers, again, what we do is we take account after the 6th student enrollment day to pull these numbers. And so you can see on the left-hand side for the 23-24 school year, this school is at 746. And on the 6th day this year, it's at 734. So fairly consistent, consistently large. We know that there are a lot of students here. But then as we take a look at this building in particular, I'd like to draw attention to the bottom right hand of that slide where you see the green, red, and blue dots. Back in 2022, the district engaged in a demographer study to take a look at how many kids we have currently in our community and doing some projection, is Dr. Casarda. And through his report, he had 3 projections of our student growth. The blue line being what he thought would be the slowest growth that we would see here at YIS. The red being what he thought was probably the most likely scenario for student growth. And then the green being what he thought would be the highest that YIS would see year over year with student growth. At the time this report was done, you can see in the red that was YIS was at 752 students at that time of the report, which put, where you conveniently can see our little fox head, closest to the highest growth kind of prediction that Dr. Casarda had, which is problematic because we're growing faster than predicted. I will note it that the board has approved the district to hire a new demographer, so we're actually going to do an updated study because this data is already old. And so we'll have a new demographer come in, work with us, but also work with the city planners and the county in terms of some of the plan developments and where growth might happen over the next 5 to 10 years for our district. Staying on this slide and taking a look at our 2 purple bars, there are 2 different numbers there, and that looks at the capacity of the building. And the reason that there are 2 different numbers is the first number of 960 takes a look at our classrooms and does an average of 30 kids per classroom. The number on the right, which is 800, takes that class size down to 25. So that's the difference in those numbers. Now, those numbers don't take into account any special programs that may have limitations for students in terms of the number of students that can be in a room. So this is a general number. It's not very, very specific, but these are really good numbers to take into account as we think about how many students, staff, and the size of the building and our capacity. Oh, I went too fast there. Okay, so as that data would indicate, we have some challenges in the district. We have that continued growth, which is causing overcrowding. I think if you're a parent and ever have seen pickup, drop off, ever been in the hallways, YIS is not alone. We're seeing that across our district. You saw the student growth. These buildings were built years ago with some anticipation of growth, but not anticipated at the rate that we're growing at this time. So we certainly are seeing some overcrowding in our buildings. We also are seeing the space that we have for some of our co-curricular and extracurricular activities. We don't have enough for all of the things that our kids want to do and all the opportunities that we want to provide our students. And so we have to think about the space that we have to provide those opportunities for our students. And as we look across the district, we also have to consider the age of our buildings. So we have some buildings that were built in the 1950s that are still online. And then we have to think about buildings that were built 25 years ago, 20 years ago, because at times then you have to look at life cycles of, say, the HVAC system, security, doors, windows, floors, ceilings. And so we have to consider all of the facets that go into the physical structures when we think about what needs to change, be added, fixed, new, as we think all of the physical structures across the district. And then lastly, we certainly every year want to take a look at our security. What does our building look like from a security standpoint for our students and staff, and what upgrades need to occur to make sure that we have the safest buildings possible for our students and our staff? And so with that, I'm going to turn over to Pat from Studio GC. He's going to facilitate some questions, but this is your time. We want to hear from you. David is used to walking about 10,000 steps a night with microphones, getting them back and forth, so we don't want anybody to be shy. But additionally, I know that you saw note cards and pencils. Not everybody is comfortable speaking in front of individuals, so if you have comments or you have questions and you just don't feel comfortable asking, please use the note card and write them down, because we will then add them to the information that we have tonight. So with that, I will turn it over to Pat and facilitate the next portion of tonight.
Thank you, Matt. Good evening. So this is really your opportunity to share with us. We've just provided some prompts for you. Any good master plan takes into account both prediction and past experiences. So we want to make sure that we're talking about what the district does well, so we can enhance that in any future planning and master planning, and take care of the things that perhaps either we're challenged with or that we're not doing as well as we could, either due to physical constraints or other things that you may have experienced as parents in the district. So let's start with successes. Is there anything you want to share, things that you think the district does well, YIS does well, or experiences you've had that have been positive experience for you and your family or the community? Anybody have any?
I'll go first.
We are recording tonight, that's why we have the microphone, so that way everybody can hear.
All right, we'll get this on record. I'm here because my wife wants me to ask questions, so. Yeah, for successes, I kind of a supportive role, but maybe the music program. I mean, I think the music program in Yorkville is really stellar as we look at the size of the school district versus the size of the students that participate. And as we travel, our kids are in the music program. I mean, there's a strong uptake early on, and we do really well. The extracurriculars, I think, even though we're struggling, I think there's a lot of encouragement to get the kids active and participating in interests that they have. So those I would say are two strong points to open up the conversation.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry, dual language. I forgot to mention that one. Thank you. Dual language is really great. We've looked at communities across the country. We always knew we wanted to be somewhere, and we just got lucky and wound up in Yorkville. But we haven't moved because we have dual language here. So we've stayed specifically for that program. So it's really great to have that here in the district.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Gotta be one.
There you go.
What he said.
Now it's on record. There you go.
So one of the things that's come up a number of times is people get their information, or folks get their information different ways, right? Whether it's electronic, social media, backpack mail, whatever the case may be. How do you receive your communications from the district?
Yeah, I get a lot of email, and it's a love-hate relationship. We need the email, but I don't get after it. I look for the updates from the administration, from the teachers about my students' progress. So if you're pushing out a communication, social media, the newspaper, backpack mail, those are the things I look for, because I'm going to lose it in my inbox.
Okay.
I will say, as far as giving a compliment, I know that the district really honed in on the fact that a lot of parents were saying they weren't receiving a lot of communication from administration, teachers, or that it was coming through multiple avenues, and it was getting confusing as you would, progress with your child through different teachers. It was coming from, this app, or it was coming via text, or it was coming whatever. So I think the district has done a really great job of kind of streamlining that communication. So I know I need to look for a newsletter. The newsletter is coming from the principal. The principal is going to be kind of an overarching, here's what's happening at the school. And then I can expect the same thing, every other week or so from our teacher, which has been really nice because I know that now that expectation has been set.
Great, thank you. Right behind you.
Okay, going off, I think that the backpack mail is really helpful. So there's so many different events happening when you think about PTO events or BPAC events or different things. And when my daughters bring that home, it ends up on the fridge. And then it actually helps my kids keep us accountable because we're trying to juggle both working, all three kids, all three sports. And then they're a part of it, which helps our family dynamic and gives everyone some power. So that's been really helpful. Like for me, yeah, I read it and then I forget it. And so having that backpack mail has been really great.
Thank you.
I'm going to back up to the first question, if that's okay. Successes. I don't want to bring up a sensitive topic. However, I think the Yorkville School District, the way that COVID was handled, which I know is 4 years ago now, but had a big impact on where my kids are today. That was a big year. That was an important year, and the way that Yorkville gave parents the choice, all of the choices, no other district in this area gave parents an in-school option, a hybrid option, a remote option, and then Yorkville took the time to figure that out, gave the three choices, and then took the feedback and said, okay, we're gonna make all three of those choices work. Again, 4 years later, I know my kids were both impacted by that in a certain, they were both different ages, but I am grateful that Yorkville took the time to make that a priority for our kids, where other districts, they stayed at home.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I mean, phenomenal. And then because we made a decision early on and realized it wasn't the right decision. So we had our kids home and knew that it wasn't productive for any of us. So being able to then encourage or change our minds and move with putting our kids back in the classroom, I agree. It's bar none probably the best thing the school district did in the last 5 years.
Great. Any other responses to this set of questions before we move on? Great feedback, thank you. So obviously a master plan has room for improvement. So our goal is to, not just for the physical assets, but for student experience, family experience, community usage, how do we take and improve upon the things that we're doing okay or the things that we can do better? So in terms of school improvements, I'm not going to read the questions to you, but really any one of those topics, anybody want to give us some insights so that we can build the master plan out?
Pick up and drop off. I see a lot of crazy things when I drop my children off and go to leave. This parking lot is pretty crazy. And then I do appreciate the option to drop during Circle Center's drop off and allow the kids to walk over. That's a huge help, I know, for a lot of parents who can't do both drop off lanes. So that's huge. I think that's something that could be better, though, especially leaving YIS.
Yeah, no, that's great feedback.
Yeah, I'll piggyback on that. The high school drop-off is also confusing. It seems like there's a lot of traffic crossing the crosswalks where if the cars were to come in northbound first, then when you're dropping your student off, they get off on the curb as opposed to getting off out in the traffic. So maybe something to consider is changing the direction of traffic and the drop-off at the high school.
Thank you.
I have a high school comment too. This is just an idea, and I obviously have no idea how it would work. But it doesn't make sense to me why the buses are this is high school. The buses are in that bus turnaround, and then there's the the drop-off problem for the kids who aren't driving, it would make more sense to me to make that bus turnaround student parking, which seems to be an issue, and have the buses drop off behind the school.
Good feedback. What about with your student in the buildings or with their teachers or experiences that they come home and talk to you about in terms of the facility itself?
I would say definitely in the younger grades, there's a lot of options for students that need accommodations such as flexible seating, being able to stand, being able to do more than just sit at a desk and learn, because I think we're figuring out over time that not every, student, that's not always a good environment for them. And it works really well when they're younger, but as they grow and get, older, pretty much a lot of those options go away. So for example, when they go from YIS to the middle school, it's like you better figure it out because you're not going to have all of those, flexible seating options, things like that. And that is a hard enough transition for the kids as it is. And so then to remove some of those things that make the classroom easier. So I would say maybe just more flexible classrooms to give students more of an option to do what works for them so they can focus and learn.
Great feedback. Thank you. Any other thoughts?
I'm, again, just to get this on the record, the freshman academy, and again, I know we're talking about YIS, but the freshman academy, while I think there's pros and cons to that, and I know it's space related, but it's a lot of stress on a new freshman to make sure they're getting to class on time, especially if they have to cross that street, which is busy. It's from a physical perspective, having those freshmen isolated, I think there's some challenges to that, right? Just in terms of weather. It's raining, it's cold. We don't live in Southern California, and those kids are having to go outside to get to their next class, in a hurry to get to the next class. It's not safe while they're crossing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just had a quick comment. If we're talking about structures, the middle school is pretty far away. We're Northsiders, so that's pretty much a challenge, and it seems to be pretty packed, right? And the high school, while I love how exotic it is, it seems to be an underutilization of the Z space or the vertical space. Again, being rather full. So there's a couple of structural comments.
My kiddos went to Circle Center, and then we came here to YIS. I'm not sure why there is I'm guessing just the boom in attendance, but the K through 3 and then the 4th through 6th, I'm not a fan. I feel like the kids felt like they needed to grow up when they came here and gave them a feeling like they're entering into a junior high type of a situation, and I feel like they lost a little bit of their youth when they came here, which is maybe a little bit dramatic, but but I can just speak for my kids specifically. I feel like they lost that little bit of a sense of community. It was a lot of kids coming in from a lot of different areas, and while that is a good thing to I feel like it's happening every 3 years, and there's really no time for them to settle and build their little community and get used to their space. So I feel like that's something to definitely consider moving forward.
So minimizing transitions.
Minimizing transitions and just allowing that K through 6 space to remain that K through 6 space. These kids are still kids, but when you switch them to another school, that transition I feel like is almost like they see it as like a rite of passage, and then therefore they're like older, and then they act older. That at least that's been our experience.
Good feedback.
To continue that, it's really hard to navigate when you have 3 kids in 3 different buildings. So when you think of all of the things that we want to be involved in, PTOs, curriculum nights, that's really challenging. And then we have students in specific programs who change buildings every couple of years. And so how do you build community with the other parents? And so when we look at our parent engagement, if that's something we really want to, that we really do value and we want to have our parents involved more, then transitions, yes, it's best for students to try to minimize, I agree, but I think that one of the positive results, if we can make that happen, would be we would see our parents engaging more with each other and in the building, because that community that our kids are going to be able to establish, we will benefit from.
Great. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
What about for those of you who have interacted, perhaps more with teachers and staff, feedback that how could the master plan be more responsive to their ability to do their job better, to service students better?
I first want to say that I think that our teachers, staff, everyone, administrators have done a really great job in continuously adapting to make spaces as usable as possible. So I do want to make that a success and a highlight. And I think it kind of goes back to, you're talking about those first slides, when we talk about all of those programs and all of those, the things we do, the specials that we run. Not most elementary buildings don't get a special every day and have the variety that we have. And so really going back to, if those are our values, then how do we make that happen? And I hope that, I know you're doing this with staff, I hope that they're showing up, because that's how you're going to know what they need is.
Yeah, we've actually,
Yeah.
just for the record, we've had 3 sessions with staff,
Yeah.
just like this.
I know you've done that. I just hope that they're voicing their needs, because as a parent, it's hard to say what they need. So I'm hoping that I hope that they show up. I know you've done it.
They weren't shy.
Okay.
Okay.
That is good to hear. I will say, just speaking on behalf of, my viewpoint at YIS, these teachers went through a lot of transition in a very short amount of time with just leadership here. So I think they're rolling with that really well. Or as well as they can be. But I think that, coming from like a PTO perspective, I was on the PTO at CCHS, PTO here, and the ability for us to give back to them is minimal. There's not much that we have the capacity to give them. And then when we do, like the other day we did a dinner for them, and we couldn't put it in the lounge area. We couldn't put it in, because there was like no space. We had to set up a whole table situation and then come back in and clean it up. So just, I would say more flexible space for them would probably be ideal.
Yeah, great.
I know that during COVID, they were given a ton of flexible space just because they had to spread out within the building due to regulations or whatever. But I feel like we gave them that, and then they had that, and then it was like, just kidding. And then it was gone.
No, that's a good point. And unfortunately, I think when space issues become a challenge, it's oftentimes the staff that volunteers to sacrifice first, as they always do every day with their kids, right? So I do think, and I appreciate you mentioning that, because I do think that as we look to this kind of broader picture of how we can rebalance things, that we take staff into account, because they have to be happy to do their job, and anything we can do to support that only helps the kids. Yes, I'm sorry, go ahead.
When we're talking about extracurriculars and space, and I know, again, here we are at YIS, but as you get to as a whole, the district, all of our music programs, we're all going down to the middle school, because the middle school is the only place that has a large enough auditorium for certain events, a large enough gym space to host a music event. It would be really nice to have space at multiple locations, within their own school, so to speak, to be able to do that. And then on the other hand, successes on the high school side, they just built a beautiful new baseball facility, beautiful, the football stadium needs some more work, but the football stadium has gotten some improvements. The seating needs to be updated in the football stadium. And again, everybody's using the same, all of the schools from littles all the way up are using the same facilities. Which is, I guess, fine, but they need some more improvement than if you're going to use them for the entire district.
Yeah, thank you. Good point. Go ahead.
Yeah, and I really got to compliment this school. I mean, I have two kids. My daughter moved on from here to high school, junior high. I have a son here right now. This administration this year has seen so much, I don't want to say a turnaround, but it's been a huge increase in just, like, it's been a great experience this year. And really just shout out to some of the teachers we have here, amazing. And a part of the planning, I know we're talking about expanding schools and growing, but what are we doing to take care of our teachers? Our district is slightly underpaid compared to some of our other districts in the area. So I'd like to know if there's some planning in there to take care of the teachers and make sure we retain this amazing talent that we have so we don't lose them to other districts. 'Cause I feel like our teachers can be undervalued by their pay. They show the appreciation and stuff, but I think pay, it's like me, I wouldn't stay at my job if I wasn't getting paid enough. So I'd like to make sure there's something in there for these teachers too.
Yeah, so I have a couple answers for that point. Yes, we certainly are examining that. Collective bargaining unions, the contract is up next year. So the compensation piece is going to be a topic of conversation. I can tell you, coming in, my philosophy is we certainly have to be competitive. It relies some on your tax base and how much money you bring in and all those different pieces. And so that is not going to be something that we sacrifice as we talk about investing in our facilities, right? So we have different pools of money that we would be dedicating to different things. And so as we think about recruitment and retention of our staff and from a compensation perspective, that is still a priority for us. And so it won't compete with what we try to do here. But it's a great point.
The last comment on the slide asks, what role can the community play in the improvements? I guess, no, that's fine. To me, that's a leading question. I'm wondering if there's something behind that, if there's some ideas that maybe the district has.
I was going to go there next, but thanks for the segue. I appreciate that.
There you go.
No, it's because obviously you all are friends in the community, and people are moving to this community based on the number of dwelling permits that have been issued in the last 10 years. You obviously know Yorkville has grown dramatically, and some people have come that don't have any children in the schools. So their ability to connect with the schools, maybe going to a football game on a Friday night, maybe seeing a performance. And so the purpose of that question was folks that who don't have kids in the district anymore. We want to make sure that we can touch them, talk to them. We do have a couple of community sessions. Our first one was not well attended. We're going to take a second stab at it and try to do a little bit different communication piece. But we just wanted to know from your perspective how you felt it would be beneficial for us to reach out to them so we could have that dialogue. But in the meantime, you want to answer your question? Or?
I just had one more thing for teachers. I've noticed that we have a lot of brand new teachers, like brand new, I mean, not just new to Yorkville, but like first ever. So I would just say making sure that they have some sort of a mentor program, something like that, because you can kind of tell as a parent when your kid has a brand new teacher, and even just, a lot of kids now have 504s, IEPs. So just making sure that those brand new teachers have a mentor, someone to really go to help them make sure that they're serving the students, but also giving them someone to kind of buddy with or something like that. Just something to help them out. We've got a lot of brand new teachers.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I guess if the question is reaching out, thank you. I want to make sure my questions or comments are heard. I guess if the question or the request from us is do we think it's a good idea to reach out to those folks that don't have children in the school district? Absolutely, right? I mean, I think we're all paying into the tax base and being, having an input and an understanding. We all went to school at some point. Being able to provide input to the community, I think there's value to that. It invests the person maybe deeper into the community. So from that aspect, I would say yes, that's a thing. If there's more that maybe we're missing on a response, let me know.
Well, do you have any suggestions on how?
On how?
Yeah.
I think of my dad. I don't know how you reach him. I don't know. No, I don't know. Newspaper, I don't know. I mean, as far as getting the word out, that seems to be maybe through the parents, right? We reach out to those friends that we have and encourage that kind. It seems not typical, right? It's a unique thing. I don't know that I've ever heard of something like that, but I love the idea. So, I don't know.
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I feel like small businesses in Yorkville, as part of the community, like obviously, they don't all have children. They may have had children in the district or still do or will. But I do feel like those small businesses get hit up pretty frequently for sports boosters, music boosters. I think we're hitting them already. So on the other hand, would some of them be willing to, put their name on the scoreboard at the middle school? Maybe. We're talking about facility improvements, would a small business be willing to have the stage named after them in the auditorium? I don't know, that would be, but I do know, again, I feel like those small businesses are hit up pretty frequently, so I don't know that that's a great idea, but maybe they'd like to be involved in some of the improvements at the schools.
We weren't necessarily suggesting donations, but.
But their involvement,
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
they're-
So my thought with that is we do have a lot of support from our community and our businesses in particular. So really utilizing those relationships already established to help them promote your listening tours within our community. So people that don't have children that are school age, they're still going to Mike and Denise's, they're still going to Fox Republic, they're still going to Dakota's, they're going to all of those businesses that support almost everything that our schools do. So I think that's a good start. I think also looking at reaching out to your religious communities. A lot of our families go to the various churches in town and really asking the different religious leaders to promote those events, put it in their newsletter, get it out there multiple times, right? Because not everyone can go every week and things like that happen. So I think kind of thinking about where do our community members go if they're not in schools? Well, we're going to go to our businesses and we're going to go to some form of community that we've established. For some people, that could be their place of worship. And I think the other thing, and these are conversations that I've had many years over my career as an educator. There are a lot of people who do not have children or do not have school-age children, and they truly don't understand the impact that a positive education system provides their community. And I don't have an answer of how to break that barrier, but I do think that that is one barrier to consider when you want to engage with people who aren't tied to the schools in some personal way.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Yeah, well said. Yeah, I love the idea of, if you want to reach them and business leaders are innovative and they've created a business and there's a quality to that, and having people like that come in and provide a voice. So reaching out to those business leaders, reaching out to the religious leaders, other community leaders, targeting them specifically, explicitly for the purpose of being a partner, if you will, in the community to kind of have this same forum, if you will, with the expectation that we are reaching out to fellow community leaders. I think that there's a lot of weight to that.
Great.
Thank you.
Resale value. Resale value comes into play. They're going to sell, whether it's them because they're downsizing or their children are inheriting or whatever the case may be. The person that purchases their home isn't going to be likely older than they are. They're likely going to be younger than they are, and they're going to want to move into an area that's got a great school district.
Right.
So it's an investment in, just like you would replace the windows on your home, you got to invest in the schools, got to make sure it's a place people want to be.
Right. Clearly something's going right here in Yorkville, right? People want to come to this community, so now we just want to make sure we can maintain that. So, okay, great. So we kind of went through a few of these. Are there any things we didn't talk about that you would like to see part of the district facilities? I mean, we talked a little bit about music, we talked about auditorium, I think we talked about field house at the high school and some other things. Are there any other elements to the facilities here in Yorkville that you think is a gap or something should be considered as we look at the long-range plan? Either based on your experience in other communities, based on your professional experience.
Oh, thank you. I got a six-pack, man.
Yeah, just to reiterate the focus on the middle school, right? I mean, I think we all recognize that it's pretty full, and if the population continues to grow, I don't know where we put the rest of those kids at that age. And then the high school, again, I already said it earlier, but I love our high school. I think it's fascinating. I'm always lost every time I walk in there, and I kind of like that. But it does seem like an underutilization of a lot of space, of a lot of the footprint and the vertical, right? And it seems rather institutional to put a big blocky building, but it is the maximum utilization of the space. So if you're looking at improvements, you don't need an additional grounds, you just improve where you're at. Maybe there's a phased approach to maximizing the space available there with additional auditorium space.
Thank you.
I have a question more than a comment, so I don't have an answer. But what questions are being asked, or what solutions are there from a security perspective? I honestly don't feel like I have a security complaint per se, but I just want to make sure that security is really a part, sadly, of these plans.
So I will tell you that annually, the district evaluates security. Daily, they evaluate security. But when we start making physical improvements, it's what can we do to incrementally improve security in all the facilities. Again, to still make them approachable, but safer. And it starts with, drop off, pick up, what happens outside the building for students and their safety and staff, and then what happens inside the building. So it is a finger of our evaluation of all the facilities. We looked at, HVAC systems as well as security. So we kind of looked at the building soup to nuts, and the district's done a terrific job in maintaining their facilities. When you talk about replacing windows at your house or your furnace or things like that, there are some things that need to be dealt with in the existing buildings, but when you look at it based on the 1.1 million square feet that the district manages, they've done a terrific job on your behalf as taxpayers. So the good news is, as you look at kind of the expenditures of a large implementation of a master plan, a large portion of it isn't going to infrastructure. It's going to go to security. It's going to go to facility improvements for students and expansion of programs that are obviously very, very successful here. So that's really the goal. So I don't know if I've answered your question.
I don't know if that was really a question, just more of a what's being considered from a security perspective.
Unfortunately, it's in the forefront of our minds every time we draw a line on a page. Thank you. Yeah, you had a...
I would say maybe an improvement is, and I'm sure you're thinking of it, but if we are adding space or building additional buildings or adding on, making sure that that space is maybe not a traditional four walls of a classroom, making that space be flexible so that it can be used in multiple ways for multiple teachers, and be able to grow and expand and shrink when needed, instead of just building another building or an addition or another floor of just square classrooms.
Great.
Thank you. Sorry. It's okay.
You came for a reason, right?
Yeah, I've got to earn my keep. Yeah, I would say, kind of building off of the comments that were made, as we look at I forget what the study was where you looked at the projection of population, but making sure that there's capacity there, right? So not only flexible spaces, but spaces to grow into. I felt like when we moved here around 2006, there was an immediate concern at that time, and we have still grown, right? So capacity was an issue, and we had schools that were just landing, right? Bristol Bay was brand new. We put our kids in there, and there was already concern. And we were creative, and the staff really helped out with that. But making sure that we have that 5-10 year capacity. I mean, we don't want to overplan, and then Yorkville takes a turn, and we're stagnant at 25,000 people. But somewhere, find that balance. Thank you.
Anyone else?
So just in terms of the process and where we go from here, I've kind of alluded to the fact that we've been capturing notes and ideas and concepts, and that we have a steering committee that is made up of teachers, principals, but also community members and students. And that group gets to take all of this information in and has the conversation to wrestle with, okay, so what does that look like for us in terms of a district and facilities? And so we are going to continue to have listening sessions at the various schools we haven't hit yet. We have an additional, and this is my selfish plug, another community listening session on December 11th. It's going to be at the high school at 7 to invite anybody. Again, you can still be a parent if you'd like, but we also are targeting folks that don't have students in the district. Maybe they're really young and not here yet or have graduated to make sure that their voice is in the room. And the last thing that I would say is we have QR codes up here on this table, and when you came in, that takes you right directly to our facilities page on our website. And so all of these meetings, the recordings are on that webpage. You can listen to other comments and conversation. Important dates are on there. When we have steering committee meetings, there are updates. So it's a very transparent webpage that you can kind of find out where we're at in the process. And so we'll be continuing to work with the architects over the course of this year to put together what those options look like for our Board of Education this summer to kind of land on what is the plan moving forward for our district. And so I do want to close out tonight by saying thank you. I really appreciate the engagement, the conversation, and for you to take your time to be with us tonight. And again, any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out, and we want to hear from you to make sure that you know your information and your comments are guiding our work. So thank you, and have a great evening.